I think at heart, we're just largely creative, heart-led people that doing things like contracts can often feel we don't trust each other. We don't, it feels sort of against that heart space. And we do when I work
We
in
need
that
prenups.
coaching.
We need prenups.
Yeah, when I work in coaching perspectives, so much boundary work happens. One tip that I often offer is weekly, depending on the size of the practice and like capacity of everybody, weekly or monthly meetings in which we have those priorities, in which we go over and are constantly reevaluating practice guidelines, practice boundaries, practice contracts, things like that to keep everybody safe.
Hey, Christy, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm really good. Welcome. I would love to ask you to introduce yourself. You okay with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I am Christie Davis. I have been a midwife in private practice for close to 15 years. I've been working really hard to retire that practice. My final retirement veil client is due in August. I've been attending births for over 20 years, and in 2018 started transitioning into the work of birth trauma healing from a somatic perspective. I work with people who have experienced a traumatic birth, as well as birth providers on career burnout and secondary trauma.
Oh, it's so real. It's one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you because I deal with this issue on the other side, which is after a traumatic event that includes a poor outcome. Midwives need chart review, they need legal guidance and counsel, and they need help with their chart a lot of times. And so I kind of do the more heady intellectual stuff, but it doesn't mean I don't hold a lot of bleeding hearts. And so it spoke to me so much, this transition that you've done in really formal education and experience, and now, shifting your whole focus to create a different kind of a practice. It just really spoke to me because I think, number one, midwives need what you offer desperately, not just in poor outcomes, but even in outcomes that went okay, but caused trauma. And I also think there are a lot of midwives who might benefit from even following in your footsteps and making this transition as well as they pivot in their careers or as midwifery becomes unsustainable for some. So I just thought this would be such an amazing conversation. Let's start with who finds out about you and how do they know to call you?
I think a lot of it is word of mouth. The way I've gotten in touch with midwives throughout North America and a little bit into Europe is doing seminars. I have a day-long seminar about burnout and birth work and secondary trauma, and it's something that I've been traveling the country doing over the last few years. And that's been a big one as far as just getting to know practices, getting to know regions of the country. And I have like several midwifery group practices that I work with in like coaching. I have a monthly subscription option basically that I do coaching with practices as well as working with individual midwives. It ends up being word of mouth that largely comes through people that attend the seminars.
That's awesome. So tell me more about this coaching.
Yeah, I really, really love doing it. One of my practices, it's a partnership, and they joke that it's like their marriage counseling for midwifery.
Yes, tell me more.
Which I adore. But, we just meet weekly, and it's sort of half just debriefs, of the births that they've had, especially those that have ended in transfer, not from the perspective of chart review and more like what you're talking about in the work that you do, but more like how that went in their heart, in their system, and in their work together, how that felt for them. And so debrief from that perspective. And half, or I guess I should say more like third, just how the practice is running as far as the relationship of working together. And then a third, just really straight up somatic work. How is the nervous system feeling on a day-to-day basis? We do a lot of checking in, like, Wow, you're talking super fast today. Can we just pause and check in what's happening in your body right now? What are you
Mm.
noticing? How is your breath coming in and out? I see
Mm.
you moving your hands a lot. Like, do they need to do some movement? Let's just shake our hands a little bit and get into
Mm.
that. And just really finding safety in the nervous system so that we can process the emotion of what is happening. So
Mm.
it's a mix of that debrief, sort of neutral third party coaching of somebody who understands midwifery practice. And from that perspective of your nervous system, how can we keep this sustainable?
That is so beautiful and so needed.
I love
I get calls from midwives who are divorcing. It's
it.
never a clean divorce in midwifery. And we want to work together so badly because the work is so hard
Yeah.
and so all encompassing. And yet, from my perspective, they don't put into play the business piece of it. They don't write contracts and they don't negotiate salaries and they don't make an exit plan and
Yep.
they don't deal with the legalities, the real administrative drama of actually sharing a business. And that's usually leads to resentment and money, blah, 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 and then it falls apart. It's much like marriages.
Yeah. I think at heart, we're just largely creative, heart-led people that doing things like contracts can often feel we don't trust each other. We don't, it feels sort of against that heart space. And we do when I work
We
in
need
that
prenups.
coaching.
We need prenups.
Yeah, when I work in coaching perspectives, so much boundary work happens. One tip that I often offer is weekly, depending on the size of the practice and like capacity of everybody, weekly or monthly meetings in which we have those priorities, in which we go over and are constantly reevaluating, practice guidelines, practice boundaries, practice contracts, things like that to keep everybody safe.
Oh, I'm cheering for you. It's so epic. This is so important. And I'm so glad that you are offering this service. There are a number of birth trauma focused folks out there. We've loved to meet the folks from Dancy Perinatal. I'm sure you're aware of them. And there's a few other Utah, like there's places I'm thinking of where there are birth trauma counselors and therapists, but it's such a fantastic and unique bridge that you're holding between having been a practicing midwife and now having this trauma informed, somatic informed therapy practice. People must just resonate with you so much. It's such a weird niche of a profession that you can't always go to a therapist and be like, so anyway, she was hemorrhaging and I had my hand inside her. Nobody understands that. So you get it. People must resonate so well with you.
Well, and I think it offers people too, like you don't have to spend 20 minutes of your session explaining why you would have your hand inside of her. You can simply say,
You
like,
have into midwifery education.
yeah, I know there were still clots. We were having this issue. I had to go in. Done. I get it. I get how much you didn't want to do that. I get all of it. And I already understand that. You don't have to educate me.
Oh, that's such a shortcut in our life. Like,
Yes.
girl, I'm high-fiving you because it's so badass that you are willing to come through this work and then hold space for other midwives. I hope people listen to this and get excited. Let's tell a story. I think some of our listeners are familiar with what somatic healing is, but it's also kind of a buzzword and maybe not super clear because it's kind of the foundation of your healing. And because I think it's the foundation of all of our real healing. Would you go a little deeper and define what it is and then give us an example of what that means to work with that in your practice?
Yes, absolutely. And I agree with you. There's a lot of buzzwords out there, and that's something that I work really hard at separating out the fact from the buzzword. Somatic, at its most literal root, means of the body. And so what we're looking at is the nervous system. And when we go through a difficult event, our nervous system becomes activated into its state of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And it gets a bad reputation, right? Activation is another one of those sort of buzzwords, like, oh, I'm feeling so activated. Good. Your nervous system is doing what it's supposed to do. It's sensing danger and it's protecting you. But in a difficult event, when that activation system steps up to keep you safe, and for whatever reason doesn't have a chance to return to its baseline state once the safety returns, that's what we integrate as trauma. So the trauma is not in the event itself. Two people can escape a burning building and only one of them walks out with trauma because one of them was resourced to return to their baseline state. One of them was not. Therefore, only one of them has trauma. And so it's not a better than, worse than, anything like that. It's just one of them had different resources than the other. So when we are working on healing through that somatic lens, what we're recognizing is that there is something that happened in your story in which your nervous system is still stuck. So when you think about it, talk about it, maybe even smell something that reminds you of it, there's some sensory experience that happens that tells your body, we're back there, it's still happening. You have a physical reaction of some sort. And so we go through the story, we slow it down. And even right there, sometimes when I say the word, like when I'm doing a consult and I say we're going to slow it down, that's the activation. People are like, no, I don't want to slow it down. I just want to get the information out to you fast.
Yeah.
But like, that's your body protecting you, right? Slowing it down is dangerous. But when we do that with resources in a really safe way, with the understanding that we're doing it in a space that danger is no longer happening, we get to find those places where the activation lies. We get to look into the body, and what that looks like is simply, okay, you're telling me about this. This feels like a big moment. I can see that your body, that your eyes are shifting, that your hands are moving, that in some way there's activation happening. Can you tell me what's happening in your body? Can we just look at what's happening right now? Not what you remember feeling, because that's the past. What are you feeling right now? And some people may mention, like, I just feel this real tension in my jaw. Okay, can we just be with the tension in your jaw? And we sit with it. We allow that moment that didn't get to complete. And so often, 30 seconds, we just sit and we watch the change happen. We watch the body work it through. And the next time they talk about that moment, the tension in the jaw doesn't happen. The emotion's still there. You get to keep that. The experience was important. We're not about getting rid of or letting go of it. We're just returning to a baseline of safety so that the nervous system understands it's not currently happening. I would say nobody knows what we're getting into as we're getting into.
Definitely. It's like becoming a parent. Like you can be like, oh, that looks so cute. And then you're like, oh, the roof just got blown off my house and I have no idea. Definitely. There's no clear way to communicate the level of intensity that this profession entails. But I would also say that there's a reason that we make it through apprenticeship. And that is that some part of our nervous system thinks that this kind of chaos is normal.
Yes. I talk with a lot of people about being empaths, which is another
the buzzword that is complicated because empath really could just be shorthand for codependence, which
and being an empath is a coping mechanism that helped us survive our childhood.
That's what I mean. Like it is a skill. Right? The reason we have that superpower is because it kept us alive, right?
Yes. Sometimes the work that we do is being able to uncouple empathy with our work. Ooh. So that we can keep that skill of being empathetic without being in that role of empath surviving my childhood while I'm working.
We're so in it right now. Given that we hypothesize that 100% of home birth midwives have a history of trauma, because otherwise, why would they accept what they're currently working in? We're speaking to our entire audience right now. And I guess I would love to give them some really tangible examples of what the difference is between the reality that they currently think of as normal and the reality that a fully nervous system regulated person experiences. I feel like I've had to do this work for myself in a really hard way. And then being the midwife's midwife for crazy events, I've gotten to see this in enough ways that I feel like I can see pattern recognition. you've come at it from formal training and education, certifications and licensure. So maybe we could meet in the middle. Would you go through and speak to our entire audience and explain some things that they think are normal that are not normal?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think one of the big ones, depending on the degree of regulation, legality, illegality in the state where you work, one of the things that has just widely been accepted as normal is every decision you make having this undercurrent of, am I going to get persecuted, prosecuted, thrown under the bus for this decision?
Yeah.
And just having that, it's like this minor activation. Well, not so minor.
No, it's pretty major because some places
I guess
there's
like
felony.
just
right?
always sort of thrumming in the background.
Yeah.
I'm maybe practicing in a way that feels true to me, that matches up to my level of comfort, my level of education. Yet, however, am I going to come through the other side of this and still have a career?
Or a life, because
Yeah.
it involves jail time sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. That's terrifying. That will activate your nervous system. And that's the marginalized profession that America has made, home birth midwifery.
Yes.
I'm here in Australia and it's so different. I went to an Australian midwifery conference and hundreds, 400 midwives at this conference. I was talking to various ones and they just have none of the worries that American midwives have. Like none.
I
It's
can
like
tell you
they're-
right now, I mean, like, from the somatic perspective, my body reacts to that. I mean, like, that's an activation for me. Like, what?
Yeah.
Is that?
None.
But yes.
None of the worries. They practice in homes and birth centers and hospitals. They have the same ish scope. There's a few things that are different, but in general, they're midwives.
Yeah.
Fully supported by their community, by their employers, by the government, by the other healthcare facilities. They practice in an integrated environment. And there are 35,000 midwives in Australia. It's a country of 35 million. It's still not enough, but the US has less than 15,000 midwives in a country of 335 million. Those sort of realities just hit me. You just notice the difference, you know?
What it could look like with support.
What it could look like, and really how far outside of normal the whole profession is in the US. It's
And
crazy.
with that, I've worked in so many communities where the relationships are so broken and damaged among midwives, and you see why when nobody is able to work in a safe and regulated way.
Yeah, and it's so sad to see, and it's so beyond, like, we can't fix this. You know, it's such a big problem. So one example is the idea of practicing with varying levels of, if this doesn't go well, I bear the brunt. What's another example, a physical example, or mental, emotional, spiritual, like whatever, but what's an example that American home birth midwives live with that they think is normal, which is really not normal?
I can't say if this is an American midwife or a world midwife problem because I've never practiced outside of the United States, but the relationship with client and midwife and the level of expectation, whether it's a small practice or an individual solo private practice, the expectation of client to midwife and the level of professionalism that we're expected to carry and the amount of pain we live with every time things don't go expected for our clients.
Oh, I agree.
It is simply devastating.
Inhuman. Like, it's so much to carry.
Intentions are always for the best interests of our client because nothing else makes sense. Why would we do this work if we didn't want empowered birthing people, if we didn't want healthy babies, healthy birthing people, healthy relationships? We wouldn't be doing this work. And when that doesn't happen and the blame is shifted to the provider, and we are expected to just absorb it. The level of pain that we carry, it's unrealistic. It's unsustainable. And I mean, from a very personal level, it's partially why I left. I was simply exhausted with having my heart broken over and over. Most of my clients were extremely satisfied, but it's impossible to have 100% of them be satisfied, right? And the ones that aren't, my heart eventually just couldn't handle it. And I don't think that's normal for a care provider to have to sustain.
Yeah, I don't think it's normal at all. I would say everything you said, I agree with. And then I would add the word available. The expectations of availability is not normal. I oftentimes will say, think about the OB.
Yes.
Anywhere in the US.
Yes.
And the client has something that they want to ask the OB. How do they get a hold of that OB?
The amount of barriers that they have to go through to get to their doctor.
I'm not saying that that's optimal either. The diametric difference tells you that there is a gulf of difference that you could be choosing in there. You don't have to be 24/7 on call all the time for every single person.
And that is
every
definitely something I work with, practices that I work with. It's something that I speak about in my conferences, is how to have those healthy boundaries of communication.
Yes.
Because it is absolutely not sustainable to be available 24/7. It is simply not sustainable.
And yet, that's the paradigm that most of us were raised in midwifery.
Yes.
If you do not become a martyr, you are selfish.
Yes.
And that's really, really not normal.
No.
In fact,
Nope.
we were to put this into some other context of trauma, like say the family unit or school, right? The expectations that midwives have had placed on them and that they continue to place on themselves, because that's how trauma rolls downhill, that whole
Yes.
are really crazy. And so I always like to try to pull it out into some other context that we're familiar with, like the OB or whatever.
Yes.
So how crazy is it what we're doing, our availability compared to any other system? It's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. You think about like making your grocery list. Are you going to call the clerk at the grocery store at 3 a.m. and be like, oh my goodness, are you guys going to have milk tomorrow? I need to know. Do you have milk? I need milk.
Yes. It's a perfect example.
I literally cannot go to sleep if I don't find out right now if you have milk tomorrow.
Yeah. That's not how any other world works, but midwifery.
And to take that just a tiny bit further, does anybody go up to the grocery store clerk when they buy their milk and say, are you sure that that's how much milk costs?
Oh my God. Well, and it's one step even crazier because it's not the grocery store clerk. They will stand there and wait for the owner of the store to come out. Whatever they were doing, that doesn't matter because their needs are more important in that moment. And they will call them out and then demand a discount on the groceries they have already agreed to buy.
Yes.
It's crazy. And so we could spend a lot of time. In fact, I think I have spent many podcasts thinking about how we got here, but let's not, because it's like, let's not go backwards. Let's go forward.
We're established. This is where we are.
Yeah. So let's go forward. So like speaking again to the individual, because there's nothing you or I are going to do about the system today, but like speaking to the individual who's listening to this podcast, who may be about to or currently running a practice that feels unsustainable. Nervous system, financially, time, like all the ways, it feels unsustainable. How do they begin to decouple from the paradigm they were raised in order to get to a safe place? What's some steps they could take?
I think that it can all be summed up in one word that many people love to hate, and that is boundaries.
You speaking my language. I love it. I love it.
I adore boundaries. Once I developed a really great relationship with them, I do so much boundary work. The biggest thing, like when we're coming out of the life of being, the empath, once we learn that being an empath is an ineffective coping technique that was very effective for surviving our childhood, but is no longer effective.
Correct.
Once we can put it into that perspective and start to understand that utilizing boundaries is an effective coping technique for this time of life, it's not being mean, it's not being bad. And if we establish them in appropriate ways, it sustains us. It honestly, at the end of the day, it helps our clients feel safe. Because if we say what we're going to do and we follow through with it, they trust us. If we say what we're going to do and then we don't do it, they don't trust us either. Nobody feels safe. So boundaries are safety for us. They're safety for our clients.
That's it right there. That's beautiful.
Thank you. And for new midwives just entering practice, it's something that I have been really shifting my focus to, because that's where we need to start, right? One idea that I've been tossing around is doing some cohort work with student midwives and taking a few months with a group of student midwives and sort of working into that. How do you write practice guidelines? When I sat down for the NARM years ago, one thing that they wanted me to do was submit my practice guidelines. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I just started practicing. I basically copied my state regulations and submitted them.
Yeah.
But like being able to really talk about, what do boundaries look like for you? Where do you feel safe in your practice? What are some practices that work for you? What are some practices that don't? What have you observed? What have you done? And really starting off with strong practice guidelines, things like that, so that we're walking into this career with boundaries already intact.
Yes, I fully support that work. So needed. I feel terrified for the next generation of midwives who are practicing in an increasingly transparent fishbowl with higher standards of documentation than ever, with multiple tech and video cameras running from people they can't control, of family members, and a state that is actively hunting them. I'm terrified for this next group of midwives, because while those of us who came up in the 90s, we were doing the same thing, nobody knew about, there was no record. Nobody knew, nobody was videotaping us. If they did, it was like a camcorder. You can't even see what's happening. They certainly don't have the whole birth. The witch hunt was not as organized or aggressive. What's happening now is midwives who follow the licensure path feel handcuffed by their requirements, and midwives who follow the radical midwifery path feel alone and excommunicated from the rest of the community. And I think we need midwives who toe the line and midwives who break the line. Like, this is one of my full beliefs always. Both types of midwives are needed. But I think both of them are becoming more and more disillusioned because of the fracture in the community, the lack of boundaries, the muddy waters that just sort of confuses everyone. I feel like there's one step before boundaries. Once I say it, like PPGs, I teach this course on policies, procedures, protocols, and guidelines. PPGs is like your public facing, and boundaries is like how you communicate with you, because boundaries are for yourself. They're not for anyone else. Only you can break your own boundaries. Rules are for other people. Boundaries are for you. But then in order to install the way that you communicate with yourself, you have to believe that you're worthy of having needs. Yeah. And I would say that is my biggest stumbling block when I work with midwives, is I discover that many of them don't actually have that core belief that they deserve to have boundaries or needs or nice things.
And that's what leads you right into that martyrdom. If you don't believe that, then it's very easy to walk right down that path of becoming a martyr, of giving away self. If there's no belief in self, it's really easy to give it away.
Yeah, that self-sacrificing, self-abandonment becomes the norm, because it's the only way that you can perceptualize being functional, right? Like, there's boundaries, it's an action for sure. But in order for that action, it has to be a core belief that you're worthy of having an edge, having a boundary, having a border. You're worthy of that because you are self-contained. If you don't have that concept, then of course people are going to bleed into you and you are going to bleed into them, and the muddy waters just continues. So like how do we breach those? Like how do we break through this?
Bringing that right into the somatic lens, that is also a survival tactic, right? I mean, like if I can just make myself disappear, if I can basically make myself tiny, that's a survival tactic.
Or spread myself around or whatever.
But it's making myself in a way unnoticeable.
Yeah,
I become a chameleon. And so then I'm unnoticeable.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, in a lot of ways, an answer to that can be working with coping techniques, working with the nervous system, working with the sense of safety. From the somatic perspective, it always comes back to the body first. That sense of safety, that sense of regulation, that sense of, okay, I'm feeling safe here. When I feel safe here, then I have access to examining questions like, why am I the way I am? Where do I come from? Where am I going? What do I need? As long as I'm in that place of not feeling safe, we literally cannot think our way out of a state of trauma, because the nervous system its only job is to keep us alive, and it will always override the brain, because the nervous system doesn't care what the brain is thinking. It only cares about keeping you alive. When we're so far into that place of like, if I just become small and become a chameleon and just blend in, the brain, of course, is looking for a story for the activation. It's telling you a lot of information, but none of it's going to be able to do anything until we find a place of safety and regulation in the body. And so from a somatic lens, the answer is, let's find a place of safety first.
Brilliant.
We can start working with the issues.
Yeah. Brilliant. You are a point of safety.
I hope to be.
That's what I work towards too. It's like I'll be available and
I feel like what I can
demonstrate
say
those
with more
boundaries.
confidence is that I'm a place of accountability. I can guarantee accountability for my own system.
Ooh. That's powerful. I'm always struck with the similarity between parenting. Aside from all the labels of parenting styles, ultimately, we all know that you can't teach emotional intelligence. You have to be it. And regulated nervous system is the core of emotional intelligence. Parents have to sort out their own stuff. Otherwise, they'll pass it on to their people. This is the call of modern times, right? The millennials are breaking all the generational curses. So this is our call of our modern times. Is like, hey, midwives now who are thinking of taking students or are currently teaching students, sort out your own stuff so that you don't pass it on, right?
Yep. Do the work.
Do the work. Yeah. So what does that look like? Say someone heard this podcast and was like, oh, Christie is for me. I'm going to work with her. What happens? Do they like call you, schedule with you? Like, how does it work?
Yeah. On my website, there's a scheduling link, and one of the options is 20-minute consults. I always think a great place is to just jump on and do a consult. And that way we can get to know each other a little bit, talk about your unique needs. Working with me, it's a dollop of work life and a dollop of developmental trauma because they love each other.
We repeat and then we repeat.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I explain it often is that our nervous system has all these little file boxes. It doesn't know that this is different from this. It's like, this is that feeling, and all those things are stuffed in this box. And as we start to sort through things, we start to separate out the boxes. A lot of times we start working and find this box that's just overstuffed with experiences.
Yeah.
And that's where we start to separate it out. It's often a little dollop of this, a little dollop of that, but trauma is trauma. And we just start figuring out how that looks in your system.
Yeah.
And, the cool thing about it is it's very results driven. It's not like jumping into talk therapy where we're going to just talk about this for the next 10 years. You mentioned parenting today, and I was working with one of my clients about her partner going back to work and being at home with the two babies for the first time and feeling really nervous about that. And so my first question is, what are you nervous about? And the answer is never, I'm worried about the kids dying. Very few people focus at that level. Some do, and we work with that if they do. But for most people, it's like, well, if they're both crying or if they're both, So instead of trying to placate, like, oh, well, they're both crying, it's okay. What we talk about is then what is your goal? What would it look like to not feel nervous about that? For most people, it's performance based, that I was able to do it right. And so what we're trying to gear towards with most people that I work with and what we worked with today is, what if your goal simply looked like safety? Okay, both kids are crying. Can you take 1 second to put your hand on your countertop and notice what your countertop feels like? My countertop feels cold. Can you come up with one adjective? My countertop feels cold. In doing that, you're telling your nervous system there's not a lion chasing you. Because if there's a lion chasing you, I guarantee you're not feeling your countertop. Touching the countertop and noticing it feels cold is telling you that you're safe. You've succeeded in your goal. Now go do whatever you do with the kids, right? So we're working on very practical levels.
Yeah.
And so it may feel huge and scary, like, oh my God, we're going to blow the lid off of all of my childhood trauma. Yeah, maybe, but we're not going to do it in the way that feels like now I'm going to be broken down to my very core and I'm going to have to rebuild myself. We're going to do it in the way of like, hey, can you just put your hand on your countertop for a second and know that you're safe?
Which leads perfectly into this, like, how does online somatic counseling work? Exactly like this. You have an exercise that you do together or that they do away from you and come back, right? Yeah.
When I first started doing it, I was like, online, right? But I have come to really love it because you can be in your space.
Safe space, maybe. Yeah.
I have a client that the other day, she said to me, she's like, I swear I'm not eating only when I see you. And I was like, I think it's great that you're eating when you see me because we're working on meeting the needs of your body and you're sitting in your bed eating. I love that that's what you do. So there's something about that I really love about online. I'm in Colorado Springs. I see people in my office sometimes, but I really do the bulk of my work online. And it is, I think, just as effective.
Yeah.
I mean, my people, I think, would say so.
And there's this thing that you offer that is so rare, this full understanding of what someone is showing up with at your door in terms of this crazy profession. That alone would be such a gift that they probably cannot find in their own community. So it's brilliant that you're.
I mean, there are a lot of people doing really great work in the realm of birth trauma and stuff, and they truly are. I mean, there's people that do have really good understanding of it, but I do think that having just that unique understanding of what we're doing at 3:00 in the morning out there alone.
Yeah, I get it too, unfortunately. Well, Christie, I was gonna say one of the I'm sort of switching to like 30,000 foot view now. I loved our in the moment, but just sort of zooming out, I see a sad trend, which I think is also healthy. And that is when we do the work and find nervous system safety, we leave midwifery.
And maybe that's okay. Karen Strange, I was talking to her a long time ago when I was making this transition. And one thing she said to me is, hey, Christie, not everybody can be the midwife.
Yeah, I agree.
It's true. I loved that. That felt just so affirming and so loving. But also, not everybody is. Like, some people are just really figuring it out. And one reason that my passion is really turning or including, I guess not turning towards, because I'm not turning away from, but including student midwifery to what I'm doing is that, hey, maybe if we change the way we're walking into this, it won't feel so much like that.
Yeah. And same way, actually, I've been really focused on students recently too, because if they get to create a different paradigm, they won't experience the levels of burnout that we have.
Yeah.
I agree.
And always in my seminars, I'm like, do as I say, not as I do. Just because I stop doesn't mean you have to, right? No, but yeah, I mean, I think sometimes when we do confront our level of burnout, I found, especially when I was first starting out, it was very hard to get enough participants to travel and do seminars because burnout is so hard to look at. It's so hard to confront. But I do think, especially working in that somatic realm, it doesn't mean that we have to stop. I think there are ways that we can shift. And, one thing that is one of the most simple little paradigm shifts that I see make the biggest difference is this idea of, instead of pushing difficult feelings into the corner like we all do, that is not bad or good. None of this is bad or good. It's just not as effective, is simply shifting to this idea of acknowledging and soothing. I liken our unpleasant feelings to a whimpering baby, that if it's just whimpering, it's usually pretty easy to pick the baby up and soothe it. Whereas if we ignore it, if we put it in the corner, it's going to start screaming, and then it's much harder to soothe. And just simply shifting into that idea of like, you're afraid. Man, I see you, fear. I understand why you're here. I'm practicing in a legal state. Every time I walk out that door to go to a birth, I see you, fear. I understand why you're here.
Yeah.
I just can't let you rule me. And a lot of times then it'll be soothed. Doesn't go away. Sometimes it's even, thank you for protecting me. You're showing up to warn me. Thank you for protecting me. Simple little paradigm shifts like that, instead of just saying, go away, fear, I don't have time for you. But saying, man, I see why you're here. Thank you. But I can't right now. I have to go to work. There are things that we can do that are small, that are functional on a day-to-day level, that mean, no, we don't have to quit. We just have to shift some things a little bit.
Yeah. I love that. And I'll add it from the heady intellectual space. Chart, like, that shit's going to be read in court,
Totally.
Like, feels like everyone's watching, and then chart, like, what you're doing, because that, I think, makes a huge difference in your ability to sort of close it and put it away. Be like, I finished that crazy birth. It is documented to the best of my ability. So yeah, I've sort of approached it from that paper shields, if you will, like, how are we going to protect ourselves? But behind the shield has to be a nervous system that can keep functioning and doesn't become this burnout cortisol mess that so many of us have experienced. So thank you for that. That is just so important. And I loved your analogy of treating them like the little people that we love and nurture all the time. The first signs, right? The first little signs is where it needs attention.
They just want to be heard.
Yeah. 100%. Christie, this has been such a gorgeous conversation. I'm so excited to know you. I want to collaborate on something. Like, you're going to hear from me in the future.
Love that. Yeah, I think that there's something beautiful there with the idea of working with the legal paperwork side versus the nervous system side, and just smushing those into a beautiful sandwich.
Yeah, well, it's the intersectionality of the work that we do, right? Is it has to be yes and. If someone wants to work with you, how do they find you? We'll put all these in the show notes.
I think that the easiest thing is the website. It's www.perinataltraumacenter.com. I think that 20-minute consult on the schedule now or book an appointment or whatever page is great. All of my contact info is on there. I am on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, although I'm terrible at posting.
That means your nervous system's regulated.
Right? So I'm on there at Perinatal Trauma Center. But yeah, the website is really probably the quickest and easiest way.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes. Thank you again for sharing your time and your wisdom. Really appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really lovely to talk to you.